in 2025, an athlete that I coach won the Tour de Stations Ultra Fondo, an epic 185-kilometer cycling event with 7,000 meters of climbing in the Swiss Alps. Mary was first lady by around 10 minutes, and she also placed highly in the field overall. What was different about this event is that it was the first time really that we targeted just one event in Mary's calendar as her most important race, as opposed to preparing for a season of racing. So in this episode, we're going to dive into that preparation. I'll show you what we did differently, and we'll also show you Mary's execution on the day. If we haven't met before, I'm Coach Kronk. I've been working with Mary for around 6 years now. And in that time, we've managed to develop Mary into one of the strongest amateur female cyclists in the world. Let's dive in. Mary came on board for coaching in 2018. At that time, running was actually her strength. She'd come from a running background. She'd ran a lot in college in the US, but she was looking to get into triathlon. Just for context here, within the first few weeks of us working together, she did the Beirut half marathon, so you can see 1:28 and 29 seconds there. She was pretty new to swimming and reasonably new to the bike also. So we started on our triathlon journey, putting in a decent amount of work. Things were going well, and on paper, it looked like Mary was capable of some strong performances. But actually, when it came to racing, we couldn't quite pull off the performance that we knew Mary was capable of in triathlon. We do know now that Mary has a little bit of a hip issue, which isn't affected on the bike, but it potentially affects the run. Maybe that was the case. Anyway, a slightly frustrating time trying to suss out what was going on here. But where Mary was living in Jordan at the time, there is a strong group of triathletes and cyclists. Mary is a very sociable character. She was enjoying the bike, so she was riding with more people, and in particular riding with people stronger than her as well. And it started to become clear that there was potential there on the bike. So we changed tact from triathlon, started to look at cycling only events and just use swimming and a little bit of running as cross training. And once we really concentrated that training volume on cycling as opposed to splitting it more across 3 sports, it became really apparent that there was potential there on the bike. Since that switch to just cycling, Mary very quickly started to get on the podium at the event she was entering and continue to get onto the podium at increasingly more competitive events as well. So how was she doing it? Well, she trained consistently. Okay, let's just have a look. This is the last 2 years, for example. You can see that everything builds gradually. We get recovery periods in there as well, and then we build again. With the volume of training that she does, we're able to get her CTL, her fitness, very, very high. In this example here, you can see we build, and then just manage that form in the back end of the season. And then we always allow for a decent amount of rest over the Christmas period as well. Mary often travels back to the US to visit family at this time. So it's a great time to have some time off the bike, maybe just do a little bit of running, a little bit of gym work, but nothing crazy over this period. Really recover from the high volume of training that she does throughout the rest of the year. And then we get back into it and we build again towards the next year. So Mary has immaculate habits. Her routine is very consistent, and something as well that she's very, very good at is if she has to travel with work, she will often find out in advance what her schedule is going to be and potentially what equipment is going to be available to her in any hotels that she might be staying at. So she relays that back to me, so we know in advance what sort of training we might do in the lead up to that trip so that she can recover a little bit while she's away, but also what equipment we've got available so she can still do some training while she's there. So she's super, super organized, and she's also, like I said, very sociable. So keep that social element in her training as well. There's always at least one ride in the week that is with other people. And most of the time, I give her freedom to ride how she wants in that ride. As we get sort of closer to events, I might start to sort of tighten the reins a little bit on those rides and say something like, okay, so on your group ride today, just ride threshold for the last 5 or the last 10 minutes of some of the longer climbs. Don't charge up a full 30, 40-minute climb at threshold over and over again during this ride. Just hold back, or I'll say maybe build through a few of the big climbs, start at tempo, build your effort and finish strong over the top of the climb. So just tightening the reins a little bit on those. So this is the layout of a typical week for Mary. This is actually taken from 2024. I want to show you this first before we look at what's different about what we did for the Tour de Stations in 2025. So a typical week for Mary has 2 hard days. So you can see here, VO2 max intervals on Tuesday and Friday. And something that I think is super powerful for Mary is the fact that she does back-to-back long rides on the weekend. Saturday is nearly always with a group, and there are stronger male riders in there, and it's usually hilly terrain as well, depending on the time of year. But definitely when it's warm enough, there'll be a lot of time in the mountains on these rides. So there's a bit more free rein on that ride to go with the group. And then the Sunday is strictly zone 2. It's strictly flat, easy ride. And I think that that combination back to back is really powerful, so long as you can recover well from such a high volume of training over those 2 days. Now, the type of racing that Mary was doing before focusing just on the Tour de Stations was more in that sort of 3 to 4.5 hour range Gran Fondo. And now the problem that you have in these races as a female, if you want to be competitive, you need to get into a fast moving group of guys and then tactically hide well within that group and then get to work on the climbs. So that really means that early on in the race, you're potentially going to have to go way over your limits, especially if there's quite a flat start to the race and there's a lot of jostling for position, groups forming, etc. As a lady, you're going to need to go really over your limit to then be able to settle into a fast moving group if you want to be competitive. Now, we saw early on in Mary's road racing career that this was definitely a weakness. She was struggling at the starts of these races. Once she got out onto the climbs and she could tap away at her own tempo, she was strong. But to do well, she needed to be stronger at the start. So we did a lot of this VO2 max work, a lot of time over threshold and sessions like this 5x5s, but not just continuous power, with punchy hard start as well, which is really good for jacking your heart rate up a little bit earlier into the interval. So you're actually accumulating more time at VO2 max within the interval. So some really tough sessions spaced out with easy stuff in between. So we didn't do so much of the threshold work. We sort of just left that to the tempo, we sort of sweet spot climbing that she'd be doing on a Saturday. So it wasn't so much structure there with that one. But yeah, when she was doing a season of racing, there was a lot more of this sort of VO2 max stuff and lactate clearance type intervals in there. In 2025, with the Tour de Stations being the focus, we knew within that ride there would be a lot more time riding at your own pace, pacing yourself over lots and lots of climbing, less needing to jostle for position in a group, etc. So because we were putting all our eggs into one basket into preparing specifically this time for that race, as opposed to generally being ready for Gran Fondos, we tailored the training. So what was different? Like a week here, you can see already something different is the VO2 max session, still doing VO2 max work because this was only actually 2 weeks out from the Marmot, which we did earlier in the year. VO2 max intervals, but long, more supra threshold efforts as opposed to those all out snarling VO2s. These are a little bit more controlled, paced a little bit. So there's those. And then we did much, much more of this torque work. So this low cadence, 50 to 60 RPM intervals. We started them actually very, very short intervals, like 60 to 90 seconds, but at very, very high power, like max torque. And then we gradually extended these intervals through to sort of 5 and 6 minute intervals. And by this time, Mary was starting to do them outside on a climb as well. So we brought these in basically to make Mary more robust when she gets deep into an event and you're climbing and you're 6-7 hours into a ride. Having that ability to recruit these extra muscle fibers that you've trained this way through this low torque work will really help late into those races when, cadence is starting to decline a bit as you get more tired. You're really relying on that torque more to produce the same power. So we trained for that with these sessions. As you can see as well, some really long rides in here, 6 hours, 5.5 hours this day. And Mary had an opportunity to ride from one place to another at this time. So she got another long, but nice and easy 0.65 IF riding. And then we were actually into some racing the next week and a couple of weeks later. So yeah, you can still see 2 key intensity sessions, nicely spaced out with easy work between, and then back-to-back long stuff to really keep building that engine on the weekend. So Mary's first big event in 2025 was the Marmot Grand Fondo. It's a beast in its own right. It was 7.5 hours on the bike, 175 kilometers with nearly 5,000 meters of climbing. A big test. And Mary actually came 5th lady in this event. So we've got her file here. Let's just have a little look just to give you a bit of an example of where she was at this time. We can just break out some sort of sections of climbs and just give you an idea of the power that she is at. So 226 normalized, which is a 0.9 IF, which is probably a bit hard to be going at that race. I'm sure we spoke about this at the time. Able to hold 0.9 IF again on this next big climb. And then you can see things start to decline a bit. 0.83 down from 0.9, so 55-minute climb here. We can see that the wheels really came off for this final climb, and she was actually barely climbing in zone 2 in the final sort of hour of the race. So definitely gone too hard early on. Lesson learned. And in Mary's notes, she also highlighted fueling potentially as an issue as well. So it wasn't the performance that we'd hoped for, but given Tour de Stations was the big one, it was good to make these mistakes now. So we had 2 months left to make sure that we dial in this pacing, really dial in this fueling strategy so that she's super strong still in that final third of such a big ride. After the Marmot, then we had 2 more months of training. There was plenty of big back-to-back rides on the weekends, and the interval work that we did in the week was more work around threshold, longer intervals, under no more torque work, a little bit of VO2 work, but we were really not so much working now on VO2 or threshold power exactly, but more of like, what percentage of my threshold can I really hold for a long period of time and do it over and over again on multiple climbs throughout a long ride, to really now looking at that durability and, to use a buzzword, fatigue resistance. So let's have a look at the pacing for the day. We wanted it to be much more controlled than the Marmot. Let's see what we did. 0.85. So yeah, still probably a little bit hard. 0.89 for 20 minutes here. That's quite hard for 20 minutes, really, when you're only 3 hours into a ride that's going to be 9.5 hours long. You can see that power and heart rate are tracking pretty consistently together until this long climb here. And you can see heart rate's staying high, power starting to fade. We're starting to get that drift there. Let's have a look at this climb at 5+ hours in. So 52 minutes at 0.82. So starting to decline now. Then this section of this climb here, 0.73. So it's at this point, 7 hours in, where really it just becomes a battle of attrition. She's stuck in zone 2, and it's just a case of slowing down less than your competitors at this point, trying to keep on top of fueling and really just trying to dog it out. Potentially she's gone too hard early on, but at this point, if she can slow down less than everybody else, then she's going to win. So you can see we're in 0.73 here, and then the final push, 0.75, she's able to put out a little bit more power, that final push to finish. So there you go. Overall then, 9.5 hours almost. Normalized power 199.77. I with an average power of 174. Big day and a fantastic win to be first lady by 10 minutes, but also I think 14th place overall is an incredible effort and a testament to Mary's hard work over not just 2025, but through all of the seasons that we've worked. If you enjoyed that dive into Mary's training and racing, if you have any questions, please do drop me a message in the comments and I'll get back to you. If you'd like to talk about coaching, I'll put a link to my email. I also have a Training Peaks training plan store, which I'll put a link to down below. Good luck with your training and racing. Take care.